Have you ever really stopped to think about what's going on legally? I mean, when you're just sitting there in a doctor's office, it feels like a simple conversation, but that interaction, it's actually a highly structured process, governed by a very specific set of rules and responsibilities for both of you. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on what's known in Mexico as the Acto Medical, or the Medical Act. So, what is the actual framework that governs that conversation, that procedure, or that diagnosis? It's so much more than a simple service transaction. It's actually a formal, legal, and ethical agreement. So let's break down exactly what that means. The entire doctor-patient relationship is built around this one central concept, the Medical Act. You could say it's the foundational pillar of medical practice, and really, understanding it is the key to everything else that follows. So what is it exactly? Well, the Medical Act is any specific action a health professional takes to protect, promote, or restore your health. Think of it as that direct moment of intervention. Giving a diagnosis, writing a prescription, performing a surgery. It's that single professional action that's right at the heart of the whole process. And making this distinction is absolutely crucial. See, the Medical Act is that specific, focused event, like a surgeon performing an operation. But medical care, well, that's much, much broader. It's the entire ecosystem supporting that act. We're talking the hospital stay, the physical therapy, the dietary advice, even the social support. The act is the critical moment of intervention. The care is the complete patient journey. So, how does this agreement get legally formed? It's kind of interesting because it's not a typical contract that you sign. The Medical Act is built on a totally different kind of understanding, but one that still has very clear rules. It's what's known as a consensual act, and it's formalized simply by mutual agreement and trust. The moment you, as a patient, seek help and a doctor agrees to provide it, boom, the Medical Act legally begins. No signature is required for that initial relationship to be valid. Now, for this act to be legitimate, it has to be built on four essential pillars. First, it's got to be performed by a licensed professional. Second, it has to follow standardized execution, established medical protocols. Third, it must have legality, meaning it stays within the bounds of the law and ethics. And so crucially, it requires the patient's informed consent. If any one of these is missing, the act just isn't valid. To see how all this works in practice, let's walk through a really common scenario. The case of an appendicitis is actually a perfect way to see the structured three-phase journey of a typical medical act. Okay, so first up is the diagnostic phase. This is where the doctor evaluates symptoms, runs tests, and confirms, yep, it's appendicitis. Next, and only with the patient's informed consent, comes the therapeutic phase, the surgery itself. And finally, you've got the recovery phase, which includes all the monitoring, pain management, and follow-ups. Each phase is distinct, but they're all connected as part of one continuous medical act. So how do we judge if a doctor acted correctly, especially when an outcome isn't what everyone hoped for? Well, the standard used is this fascinating legal and ethical concept called lex artis. It's basically the golden rule for judging medical practice. Lex artis ad hoc? Yeah, it sounds complex, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It asks, did the doctor act reasonably given the specific circumstances? It's not a rigid rulebook. It takes into account the knowledge, the technology, and the resources that were available in that particular hospital on that particular day. An action in a small, rural clinic with limited resources is going to be judged differently than one in a state-of-the-art urban hospital. Context is everything. And this leads us to the most critical implication of lex artis, and it's captured perfectly by this statement. The doctor's duty is to employ all means, not to guarantee the results. This is maybe the most misunderstood concept in medical law. It means a doctor's duty is to use their skills and the available resources correctly, not to promise a perfect outcome. Let's really break that down. Doctors have an obligation of means. What that means is their duty is to apply their knowledge correctly and use the resources they have diligently. They do not, however, have an obligation of results, which would mean guaranteeing a cure. Medicine just isn't an exact science, right? So an unsuccessful outcome doesn't automatically equal malpractice as long as the correct process was followed. And that, of course, brings us to our final section. We've defined the rules, we've defined the standards. But what happens when those standards aren't met? What are the real-world consequences for professionals who fall short? Well, when things go wrong, there are generally three main types of consequences. First, there's civil responsibility, which is all about financial compensation for negligence. Think of a patient suing for damages. Second is administrative, which deals with regulations, like a clinic getting fined for safety violations. And finally, there's penal responsibility, which only applies when an action is considered an actual crime, like gross negligence that leads to a death. So, as we've seen, that visit to the doctor is so much more than a simple transaction. The Medical Act creates this complex web of rights and duties. It's a framework designed to protect you, the patient, while giving the professional really clear guidelines to follow. So, the next time you think about any medical procedure, ask yourself this. Is it just a simple action, or is it the final step in a complex, invisible, and totally essential web of responsibilities? The answer, I think, completely changes how we see healthcare.